We know what happened to the Sadwana. We know what happened to Tafawa Balewa. We know what happened to the different persons down there. We know what happened to the actions of the Yoruba leaders. We know what happened to the Igbo leaders. We know what happened in 66. We know what happened in 67. We know what happened in the 70s. We know what happened in 75. We know what happened in the 80s, in the 90s. We know what happened in 1993, the annulment of the elections and all that. We know what happened in 99. We know what happened in 2003 and 2007. We still know. So that even the guy who won Yaradua came out to say, I know it's a system born out of corruption that brought me in and about the power, and I'm set to make changes. Who knows how he actually died? Who knows what went down there to see to it that he did the things he did, and he became as sick as he became, and he died the way he died? Who knows? Who knows what really happened to Abacha? Who really knows what happened to Yaradua? We really don't know. We really cannot say for the two of them. So I see. At least we know Buhari's case. Buhari wouldn't have survived that long if he had not been Nigerian president. He would have died a long time ago, and all of those types of conversations. I get to laugh whenever I hear Nigerians complain about racism and how this come to affect them. It's very, very strange to see that the people who are deeply entrenched in tribal wars and tribal arguments and ethnic divides and fights here and there would still come to recognize this when it's done to them. And this doesn't go to justify racism, right? Because I've seen many persons who get to use what happens to one people because they are racist and say, okay, when racism is done to them, then it's justified. No, I don't I don't belong to that particular camp. I rather belong to the camp that would condemn it on both sides and then state the case as the case ordinarily is supposed to be. Because what in God's name, or what in the universe name is this whole clamor to remain within one's own group of people, from the idea of marriage to the idea of relationship with people to the idea of coming to know people, and to the different ways we ought to come to know ourselves, and the so-called desire to to just to just be allowed to do whatever we want to do abroad, and then we come back home and we don't want that same sense of commitment. What is this with this shitty, crazy, stupid, dumb idea of our brutish, barbaric concerns and attachment to the tribes we ordinarily have been given over over different over different generations down to the current one we have. I wonder what would have become of the Germanic people if they are not united amongst themselves, and the unification of the German people, and thanks to Luther also, and what he did with the translation of the Bible to the German language, to the Dutch land, and all of those type of conversations. And where he did that is not too far from where I am at the moment, but the situation on ground is a different conversation entirely. You're in Germany, you hear of the whole idea of racism and all of this, and it's valid. These things are valid. These things are valid conversations to talk about. These things are valid themes to want to explore and all of that. But what about us back home? What do we do? How do we lead our lives? How do we live? How do we live? How do we live uh, within our own realities? How do we go? How do we see marriage? How do we see our education? How does it play out in our lives? What do we learn in schools? How does our educational system transform us? How do they reform us? How do they rebrandish us? How do they come to give us the protection we ought to ordinarily have that at the moment we don't have? These are all the things I'm struggling to ask myself because these are the things I don't have the answers to, because these are the things that make me annoyed each time I see a graduate, each time I see somebody who's gone to a secondary school who cannot who cannot who cannot do who cannot do the basic things they ought to do for themselves and the likes of that, who cannot think critically. It calls to mind our educational system and what we've learned as a people and how we've come to see our lives and how we've come to not see our lives and how we've come not to recognize ourselves and how we've come to not, respect the ways in which we ought to be living. How do we see the man from Kanuri? How do we see the man from Ijaw? How do we see the Kalabari man? How do we see the woman from Calabar? How do we see the Ogoja woman? How do we see the Bira boy? How do we see the Igbo boy? How do we see the Hausa man? How do we see the Fulani woman? How do we see the the worry boy, that little boy down there? How do we see the woman from Owerri, even within the same region, even within the Igbo race, so to say? How do we see the man from Delta? Is he real Igbo? The whole argument and the whole postulations as to Delta Igbo, Igbo across River Niger, and all of those type of stuff. Rivers Igbo, those divides we get to put up down there. And people go to school, oh, people have spent 4 years in school, and our lecturers, even, where do I even want to start with them? Where do I want to start with our lecturers? Where do I want to start with our lecturers? Where do I want to go with those ones? How do I even want to even start opening my mouth and saying the things I want to say without looking like a fool? How do you want to start defending a people so indefensible? How do you want to stand up for a people so brutish in their ways of teaching, so annoying in their ways of understanding life and understanding situations and understanding the ways in which life ought to go, that they all of a sudden travel abroad on little grants, on Erasmus grants for 6 semesters for some lectures, and they're all of a sudden wow, and they're all of a sudden so grand and so smart and in and about all of this type of stuff. But then on the very very basic assumptions of things within their own country, they cannot stand the test of morality. They cannot stand the test of a lot of stuff and in and about all of those type of conversations. And why wouldn't they even breed the type of students we get to breed? Look at the situation we find ourselves and tell tell tell, tell, tell me why I shouldn't be angry. You listening to me listening to myself. What is the level of tribal sentiments I get to exhibit on a daily, and how is it keeping the country backwards? I grew up in the South. All my life was in the South. I spent all my time in the South, was born to a mother from the South, learned how to speak the different languages and dialects I learned how to speak, including Igbo, from the South, perfected it in the Southeast and all of that, all still within the South, right? But with little or no real time spent in the Southeast, so to say, or the state of origin where my dad is from. But yet I would want to do anything political tomorrow. Because of the so-called idea of state of origin, I would have to be dragged to leave whatever prospect I must have had in the South. What they call the South. It's very, very strange when I get to hear these descriptions, South, Middle Belt. But we understand what we are saying. If we can talk about the Middle East, we can talk about a whole lot of other things, or the far west, and all of those type of conversations we have in geopolitical blocks and conversations. But Why can't I be allowed to function in, let's assume I was born in Bayelsa. Why can't I be allowed to function there? Or if I was born in Akwa Ibom and I speak the language and I know the people and the people know me, they come to have this trust for me. Why can't I integrate and then come to call that place my home? Why do I need to travel as far back as Anambra from 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 Akwa Ibom? Not even Abia, Anambra, the other end of the spectrum, just to go start to do what? To start life afresh, to start beginning to think how to participate and get engaged in politics and then come to understand it. Meanwhile, I went to school there. I was born there. I have a birth certificate in the South, or the South rather. I did everything I did in the South. Why can't I be allowed to participate in governance down there? It's a question I ask. It's a question I want answers. It's a question I it's a question I need. It's a question I need answers from and all of those type of stuff. And it's a question many persons don't see the need and the reason to answer. We just continue to tell ourselves and clamor on this particular tribal hate and sentiment. Are people you share the same color of skin? Are people you share the same food? If not on the broad spectrum, all of us, almost everybody, not everybody uses palm oil in Nigeria. Everybody uses palm oil in Nigeria. Everybody at least knows what fufu is. Everybody have an idea of what akpu is, or what fufu is, or what pandeyam is, or what begiri is, or what amala is. Even if you don't eat it, these are realities that you have. These are things you cannot run away from. Unlike the idea of spaghetti and macaroni and a lot of things. Okay, Indomie, the instant noodle brand Indomie is not it's not Nigerian, but it has become Nigerian in as much as the culture recognizes it now. And almost every other brand that has tried to thrive in Nigeria has thrived on the platform of calling themselves Indomie, all of those type of stuff. And it's become part and parcel of us. The same way Omo was, the same way Clean is, the same way Maggi is. It's not a seasoning cube, but it has come to be called all of that. You cannot hear of no, you cannot hear of almost any other thing. The only thing you hear about is Maggi, 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 Maggi for soup, Maggi for soup. Give me Maggi, give me no Maggi. As if no and Maggi are not just two different brands producing seasoning cubes for cooking and all of those type of conversations down there, producing other seasonings out there in the market and stuff like that. So we are people with so much similarities. We are people with so much close realities. We are people with so much stuff in common, and yet we go on and about telling ourselves that there is nothing we can do to salvage our situation than to continue to hold on to the tribe, and yet we want a united Nigeria. And so I begin to ask you, what is Nigeria to you? You can have the argument Chimamanda had as to say she's first and foremost Igbo. True, she's first and foremost Igbo, but she's also Nigerian. What is Nigeria to you? How do you see it? Is it a building block? Is it a shrinking block? Do you look at it from a 3D pedurantist perspective, or do you look at it from a 4D standpoint? Which particular perspective are you looking at this particular idea of Nigeria? Almost all of us alive at the moment were handed Nigeria, we're handed the country at birth. We didn't, almost everybody born from the 60s were handed the country at birth to them. Barely anybody could lay claims of okay, there was 67, there was a breakage, and then there was the independence of Biafra and all of that. From the 70s, okay, some person might say, okay, now I'm stateless, and all of those type of conversation. They took away Biafra and all that, and Biafra was my one true home, and all of those type of ideas. Uduwa is there, Arewa is there, and all of those type of conversation. But still, at the moment you have a passport, you travel abroad. You don't travel with a Biafran passport. It is not recognized. You don't travel with an Oduduwa passport. I don't know if there's any. It's not recognized. You don't travel with an Arewa passport. It's not recognized. You travel with a Nigerian passport. You have a Nigerian ID card. You have a Nigerian driving license. You have a Nigerian university certificate at the moment if you schooled in the country, or a high school certificate if you happen to have gone to school in the country, in and about that. But what is Nigeria to you? To what level can you let your tribe go while retaining it, if you understand what I mean, in the same thought pattern of Ojuku, in because I'm involved, that the tribe has to lower a bit for the nation to take place, because many persons tend to cling so much to the tribe and most likely want to give up the nation and all of that, because tribal sentiments are very, very beautiful and all of that. But where has it led us? This tribal sentiment we've tried to put out there, where has this tribal sentiment led us as a people? Where has it led us? Where are we at the moment? Where can we be that we are not? And how can we go about becoming these people that we are not at the moment from what we ordinarily have today? Because it's a question I keep on asking. It's a question you should be asking yourself also. What level of tribal sentiments are we putting up with that is seeing to it that we are not progressing? A lot. A lot. I tell you for free. A lot of sentiments is holding us back. If the person is not from my tribe, the person cannot be president. If the person is from my tribe and the person is not qualified and then given an appointment, the person, everybody is fine because my tribe is moving and my tribe is standing tall and growing strong and making all the necessary progress and all of those type of conversations. For how long are we going to tell ourselves that lie? And even if our brothers are qualified, our sisters are qualified for that job, and the other people are equally qualified, what happens to that sense of meritocracy attached also still with a sense of federal character so that it's evenly spread? What about that? Or you're just told that, okay, my brother is the person at the moment, my brother is the current army chief of staff or whatsoever, the defense staff, the defense minister, and all of that. So everything is fine. My brother got an appointment, so and so it's all good. I don't want to think about equity. I don't want to think about any other thing. It's favoring our people, it's favoring our people. What do you mean it's favoring your people? If the head is fine, does it mean the leg is also fine? If the ear is having pains, does it mean the teeth is equally fine? These are the things we are not looking at. These are the things I want you to be seeing. These are the perspectives I want you to have and to think critically also, because sometimes our educational system is a sham. Even education gotten abroad sometimes, and especially when it comes to critical thinking and the likes of that. And this is not me insulting anybody's sensibility, but if you are a foolish person, you're a foolish person. If you cannot think beyond the tribe, then you're a tribalist. You are as good as a racist as any other person on a global front, and this kind of conversation is down there. So in and about all of these kind of stuff are the things we ought to look at, are the things we ought to see that we are not seeing, and talk about and grow together and see how we can come to look at our lives and look at our lives well and look at our lives better. Nelson Mandela kept on making this feast. This, 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 they're easily broken. They're easily folded, they're easily crumbled. And we have the same adage when it comes to the idea of a broom. The broom made out of the palm fronds, Single ones are easily crumbled, single brooms are easily broken and crushed. But then when you put the bundle together, it's difficult to crush, it's difficult to break, it's difficult to break. Same thing also with us. Like Mandela will put out that feast. When you put it together, it's hard to want to bend, it's hard to want to break. Same way if I put my two hands like this, it's hard to want to twist, it's hard to want to bend, and it's much more easier if we come together and function together. This thing shouldn't be a video taking us this long to come to realize. It shouldn't be taking us this long to come to look at. We know what happened to the Sadwana. We know what happened to Tafawa Balewa. We know what happened to the different persons down there. We know what happened to the factions of the Yoruba leaders. We know what happened to the Igbo leaders. We know what happened in 66. We know what happened in 67. We know what happened in the 70s. We know what happened in 75. We know what happened in the 80s, in the 90s. We know what happened in 1993. The annulment of the elections and all that. We know what happened in 99. We know what happened in 2003 and 2007. We still know. So that even the guy who won Yaradua came out to say, I know it's a system born out of corruption that brought me in and about the power, and I'm set to make changes. Who knows how he actually died? Who knows what went down there to see to it that he did the things he did, and he became as sick as he became, and he died the way he died? Who knows? Who knows what really happened to Abacha? Nobody. Who really knows what happened to Yaradua? Not Abacha, but even Abacha, who knows what happened to him? We really don't know. We really cannot say for the two of them. They were sick. Well, at least we know Buhari's case. Buhari wouldn't have survived that long if he had not been Nigerian president. He would have died uh, a long time ago, and all of those type of conversations. But the crux of this matter is that we are so stupid that we don't look at ourselves and we don't look at the things we can do together. We don't look at how we can progress and make peace with ourselves and how we can grow and stand tall. We want to give up the most powerful black nation. For what? For hell, what? You want to give up the idea of the most powerful black nation. For who? For what? Why? Why is that important to you? Why is that so? Why should that even be the case in the first place? Why do you want to give up something as important as that? Why do you never? Shipasham, it's not you. I was actually talking. It was the topic about I was talking on the camera, not you. So, that particular part about are you normal? Another person heard it and told me sorry. He thought I was talking to him as crossing. But you see, he knows he's normal and he's apologizing. If it were you, will you do that? You would have asked me where my father is from. You would have asked me all of these questions. You would have asked me all of these themes and all of this conversation and all of these ways of looking at things and dilly-dallying and all of those type of conversations born out of this hate and this craziness we don't want to let ourselves escape from. We don't want to let ourselves come out from. We don't want to let ourselves and have a freedom of mind, a freedom of heart, a freedom of soul, a freedom to live happily ever after. We don't want to do anything that will bring us happiness. We just want to continue to wallow in despondency, wallow in our self-delusion and our self-illusions and the different perceptions we have about ourselves, while we continue to stay down. And it's not even as if we're even doing well as a people. Our economy is in shambles. We are not growing well. We are not standing well. We are not standing strong. And yet we found a way to tell ourselves, education doesn't really matter so much. And we have seen the number of people leaving school, even those who had no reason to leave school in the first place, just leaving school unnecessarily because education is a scam. Education can never be a scam. Education can never be a scam. Education can never be a scam. It is not a scam. It will not be a scam. It is a thing we ought to do. It is a thing we must do. It is a thing we ought to see ourselves do today, tomorrow, into the future. Outside of this, I don't see how we are making progress. I don't see how we would grow. I don't see how we would come to function. I don't know how else to say it. And tribalism is born out of ignorance, telling us that we are too different. We are so different from ourselves. We are not so different after all. We are not so different from ourselves. We are similar. We are together. We are supposed to be one. We are supposed to try to foster peace and unity while maintaining our individuality and all that. And I don't know how else to say this than how I have said it. For the longest period of time, we have been stupid. For the longest period of time, it has taken us too long to come to make peace and make change. And we must do it now, or we crumble together. We must do it now, or we labor in vain. We must do it now, or I don't know how else we would come to make the progress we want to make as a people. Not even the so called West leave us divided as we are. Even when they are fighting, they still benefit from themselves. They still buy oil from Russia. Think about that. Members of the European Union, because they know they cannot do it alone. Nigerians, let me wake up together. Together. That's the only way out. I am Biringkpa in Mecca. See you next time. But until then, think, think, think. Think of the roles you've played in tribalism. Think of the role you've played in racist theories. Think of the roles you've played in prolonging the subjugation and humiliation of a people and all of that. And think about how you can make change and how you can make things better. That's the only thing I have to tell you. That's the only way to go. That's the only way forward. Else, I don't know what to tell you. Shame on us until we do that. Shame on you. Shame on me. Shame on everybody participating and giving tribalism a chance to thrive, giving racism a chance to thrive. Shame. Shame on everybody. Shame on you. Shame on me.